Imagine how devastated a country must be after going through more than a decade of civil war. And imagine that after that, this same country declares war against 4 European superpowers. That was the reality of Spain under Philip V, which went to war simultaneously against England, France, the Duchy of Savoy, the Netherlands, and Austria, less than 10 years after going through a bloody civil war. But how did Spain manage to accomplish this? What went wrong with their plan? How did the course of that war unfold? And how did Spain plot to change even the thrones of the main neighboring powers? In today's video, we will unravel the War of the Quadruples alliance and find out how it changed the geopolitical paradigm of Europe forever. But before we start the video, if you like our content, become a member of our channel right now. That way, you'll have access to our group and exclusive content, including live classes, so you can dive even deeper into the hidden side of history. To understand the Spanish power in the 18th century, we first need to understand how its crown was built. The Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, laid the foundations of the Spanish Empire, not only by discovering the Americas, but also by reshaping the map of Europe. Through a series of marriages and strategic alliances, the monarchs ensured that the kings of Castile would also inherit the crown of Aragon. Navarre, the lordship of Flanders, which included the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, the Duchy of Burgundy, the Kingdom of Naples and Sicily, and the Duchy of Milan. Not to mention the vastness of Spanish America. And through this power, the Spanish kings were able to get involved in Mediterranean geopolitics through Naples, while also being involved in Northern Europe through Flanders. Thus, the Catholic monarchy begins a process of influence throughout Europe and the world. They were waging the 30 Years' War in Germany and the 80 Years' War in the Netherlands. At the same time, they fought the English in the North Sea and the Ottomans in the Mediterranean. The Spanish crown was always at war, imposing its power and will throughout Europe and maintaining its dominance at great cost. However, the entire empire was about to collapse from within. As a result of long-standing incestuous relationships with marriages between close relatives, in the 17th century King Charles II was born, who was full of physical deformities. And this king ends up dying without leaving any descendants. And to make matters worse, on his deathbed, he appoints a member of the French royalty, Philippe d'Anjou, who was the grandson of Louis XIV, as his successor. And this move created a huge problem. That's because Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I, grandson of Philippe III, believed that his son Charles, who would become Holy Roman Emperor in the future, had a greater right to the Spanish crown. And so, with the death of Charles, all of Europe goes to war. The supporters of Austria were afraid of a union between France and Spain, since Philippe d'Anjou was second in line to the French crown. At the same time, the supporters of France were against a monarch who would be both Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain. Thus, from 1701 to 1714, Spain was devastated by troops from all over the world. Austrians, English, Portuguese, Dutch, Italians, French, and Germans fought on Spanish soil and sometimes conquered towns and cities for their factions and for the claims of their royal houses, leaving a trail of destruction behind. The Portuguese even managed to conquer the capital of Spain, Madrid, for a short period of time. But in 1713, the Treaty of Utrecht was finally established, where Philippe V ascended to power under the condition that he would never ascend to the French crown, as well as not allowing, in the future, a union between France and Spain. In this way, France and Spain would be ruled by the House of Bourbon, but they could never unite as a single state. And in addition to this condition present in the treaty, the Spanish also lose Sicily to the Duchy of Savoy, and to Austria, they lose all their non-Iberian European territories. In other words, they lost the Kingdom of Naples, the Austrian Netherlands, which is now Belgium, the Duchy of Milan, and also Sardinia. But even in ruins, Spain was still formidable. After all, the Spanish still retained the grandeur of an empire that stretched from one end of the American continent to the other. Thus, fearing that a united Spain might once again rebel against the treaty, France, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands formed the Triple Alliance in 1717 to counter Spain's growth and possible violations of the Treaty of Utrecht. And that's when a skillful politician comes into play. One of the ambassadors who most supported Felipe d'Anjou's claims to the Spanish throne was the priest from Parma named Giulio Alberoni. Alberoni was the ambassador of Parma in Spain, and with great political skill, he managed to arrange the marriage of Isabel de Farnesio, Princess of Parma, with the new King of Spain. This diplomatic success made Alberoni rise more and more each day in Felipe's court, favored by the Queen. Thus, in a short time, he was appointed bishop in Malaga, and shortly after would be elevated to cardinal. Alberoni planned to completely reform Spain. Among his reforms were the Nueva Planta decrees, already initiated by Felipe, which ended the charters and privileges of Catalonia, Aragon, and the Balearic Islands, making them equal to Castile. But no matter how many reform plans Alberoni had for the country, he never really accepted the fact that Spain had lost its other European kingdoms. The king, in 1717, began to develop episodes of bipolar disorder and depression, with bursts of action and stubbornness in pursuit of glory. So even though he had reformed the navy and the army, Alberoni was pressured by Felipe V to make Spain regain its former glories and its old European territories. And in Europe, a perfect reason for this was emerging. The Duchy of Savoy and Austria were planning to exchange the territories of Sicily and Sardinia with each other. This would be good for both countries because of the geographical proximity to these territories. But Felipe interprets this act as a violation of the Treaty of Utrecht, and so he decides to attack to recover the former Spanish territories in Europe. In 1717, the Spanish invade Sardinia to the astonishment of all the powers. No one imagined that Spain would recover its strength so soon to the point of attacking other territories. Europe was still shattered after a decade of war and watched in astonishment as Spain, which had been the country most devastated by the war, wanted to recover its former possessions. And the situation would only get worse. In 1718, a grand Spanish expeditionary force set out from Barcelona. It was made up of 12 ships of the line, 17 frigates, 7 galleys escorting more than 36,000 infantry soldiers, and 8,000 cavalrymen, in addition to artillery, supplies, and ammunition. And the objective of this grand fleet was to retake the island of Sicily, which soon fell without much resistance. And beyond that, Cardinal Alberoni also began maneuvering abroad, especially through conspiracies. He began exchanging letters with several French nobles, especially Louis Auguste, Duke of Maine, and Anne-Louise Benedicta of Bourbon, in order to conspire against the regent of France, Philippe of Orléans. The conspiracy aimed to depose Philippe of Orléans, who was the regent of the young Louis XV, and give control to Philip V of Spain. Thus, Philip would rule both France and Spain at the same time. But the conspiracy was soon discovered and completely dismantled. Another similar conspiracy, the Pontcalec conspiracy, was also discovered, and the French crown thus decided to go to war against Spain. The French invaded the border region with the support of the Catalans, and they soon besieged the border city of San Sebastian. And the Spaniards, in response, sent an expedition to Brittany, to the city of Van, with 1,000 soldiers and weapons for 10,000 people, in order to incite the local population to take up arms against the French king. But since the Bretons did not join a revolt, the Spaniards ended up returning quickly. And in the face of war, Philip V ends up not realizing his own weaknesses. In the Mediterranean, the British, without declaring war, attack and sink a large part of the Spanish fleet, which is slaughtered after being completely caught by surprise at the Battle of Cape Passaro. Felipe saw the situation change day after day. Austria made peace with the Ottomans to join the Triple Alliance, thus forming the Quadruple Alliance. But the Spanish, instead of seeking peace, still tried to retaliate. Austria, in an attempt to weaken the English, begins to support the Jacobites to try to restore the Catholic Stuarts to the English throne. But the Cardinals' plans begin to fall apart. Of the expeditionary force sent, fewer than 300 Spaniards managed to reach Scotland to support the Jacobites. And the British, furious upon learning of this, decide to press on by invading Vigo in Galicia and opening another front against the Spanish king. Thus, pressured by France and with England literally invading Galicia, Spain finally gives up its European ambitions. Felipe decides to dismiss Alberoni and even orders his arrest, forcing him to flee to Italy, where he would continue to be pursued. And as time went by, Felipe's mental condition would get even worse. The king would waste away in his delusions, his bipolar disorder worsening.
De depressão até renunciar à coroa. Inclusive,
during intense delusional episodes, he would jump around the palace croaking, believing he was a frog. But what is most interesting in all these events is the fact that the Spanish monarchy, less than 10 years after the end of a civil war that lasted more than a decade, would dare to face 4 European powers at the same time, and still come out ahead, conquering 2 islands, moving on to a coup in one neighboring country and a revolt in another. And even though the British came out of the war with a stronger navy, they would still be humiliated on other occasions, like in the invasion of Cartagena and in their attempts to take Spanish America. This reminds us of the iconic statement attributed to Otto von Bismarck in the 19th century. I am firmly convinced that Spain is the strongest country in the world. For centuries, it has tried to destroy itself, and it still hasn't succeeded. And you? Did you know about the War of the Quadruple Alliance? What surprised you the most? So go ahead and leave your comment right now to support our work. And take the opportunity to become a member of the channel right now. That way you'll have access to exclusive content so you can not only support our work, but also dive deeper and learn even more about the fascinating Iberian history.